Hello and welcome to this new video. In the previous video, we implemented the Player Readiness Management System. From now on, we can start the process of starting the match and playing. In this video, we want to prepare our UI so that the host can select the map to play, and in the next video, we will implement the logic of starting the match and sending the lobby players to the level to play. What we want to do here for the Map Selector widget is to allow the player to select a map from a list of maps to play that we must define later. We can code the selection of the map in the widget, but I do not like this type of implementation. On the other hand, I prefer to implement a code that can be used in several widgets of this type in the game. Therefore, to go through a reusable macro for several objectives. Follow me. You will understand everything. Go to the Map Selector widget and open it. Now we need to define the names of the maps that the player can select to play. So I want to create an enum containing the playable maps of our game. Go to the Levels folder. Then create a new folder and name it Game. Then open it. There, create a blueprint enum and name it E_game maps. Then open it. In this enum, we have to add the names of the maps that the player can play. For this tutorial, I want to add 3 maps and I want to name them World 1, World 2 and World 3. If you already have maps in your game, add their names here. As I already announced, I want to define a macro that allows the player to select an item from a list. For example, switch between map names when the right and left arrows are clicked. Go to the main menu folder, then to the common widget folder. There we want to create the macro because it is independent of a level or a widget. Add a new blueprint macro library. Then choose its parent class. You can use the object class as parent if you want it to be callable from any object. I want to choose the user widget class as parent, because for me it is macro to use for widgets. Once created and opened, add a new function and name it getNextArrayItem, so it is a function that is used to give us the next item in an array. Add a new function and name it getPreviousArrayItem, so it is a function that serves to do the opposite of the first function. In the getNextArrayItem function, add an input of type exec. Now add an input that represents the array in which we will obtain the next item. The type of this array is wildcard, so it is an input that can take any type of arrays. Add a third input, which represents the current item of the array, so the element on which we will count to obtain the element which follows it. It is also a wildcard type input. Call the find node to find the index of the current item in the list. Get the last index of the array. If the index of the current item is equal to the last index, then the next array item will be the first item in the array. Call the local integer node to declare a local integer variable in the function. Then call the node setByRefVar to update the value of this local variable. Do a select int on the value to give to the variable. If the next array item is the first element of the array, then the value to give to the variable is 0. It is the index of the first element, otherwise, the next array item will be on the index of the current item plus 1. Once we have the index of the next array item, find the element corresponding to this index from the array. I know you may have a complexity to understand the script. I invite you to look at it in detail. Anyway, you can do what I do and not make a puzzle with this function. Now go into the getPreviousArrayItem function and add the same input as the first function. Find the index of the current item of this array. Define a local variable and call the node set, as we did in the first function. If the index of the current element is less than or equal to 0, it means that it is the first element or that it does not exist. In this case, the index of the previous array item will be the last index of the array. Otherwise, it will be at the current item index -1. There you go, the macro is ready to use. Back in the Map Selector widget, we want to start using the macro to implement the logic of selecting the map to play. Add the event on clicked when the left and right arrows are clicked. Add two event dispatchers, and name them on next and on previous. If you don't know what an event dispatcher is, then it is simply an event that can be called in an object, so it fires in that object. Then we can bind it to another object. So we can know that an execution has been completed in an object from another object. For example, in our case, we want to know that the player clicked on an arrow from the home widget. Drag the onPrevious event and click call when the left arrow is clicked. Do the same for the onNext event when the right arrow is clicked. Now create a variable of type name, and name it selected option. It represents the current selected map. Now going back to the widget designer, we want to update the text to be the value of the selected option variable. Create a binding for this text. Then in the created binding function, update the value of the text according to the selected option variable. Set the variable editable. And expose on spawn. Add a new function and name it switch. This function takes a parameter, a boolean, which specifies if the switch to be made is to the right or the left of the current item of the array, so it is the next array item or the previous array item. If the right parameter is true, then the switch is to get the next array item, in which case we will call the macro function getNextArrayItem. Otherwise, we will call the macro function getPreviousArrayItem. Add a new variable of type nameArray and name it options. This variable represents the list of map names in which we will make the switch. Make it editable and expose on spawn. Now connect the pins of the macro function to the corresponding variables. Once we have the next array item, update the value of the selected option variable. If the switch is to the left, do the same thing but using the getPreviousArrayItem function of the macro. Add a return node to return the new selected option. Everything is ready now for the Map Selector widget. Return to the Home widget. There, we want to call what we implemented in the Map Selector widget. Call the onPreConstruct event. In this event we will loop through the list of map names. So via the e_gamemaps enum that we have already created. To iterate an enum, type for each followed by the name of the enum. For each element of the enum, we want to add the name of the map to the options array of the Map Selector widget. Once the loop is complete, we need to call the switch function of the Map Selector widget to get the next array item. Promote the output to a variable, then name it selected map. Go back to the designer and select the Map Selector widget, then bind the two event dispatchers on Next and on Previous. If the player clicks the right arrow, we have to do a switch to the right. Then update the value of the selected map variable. If the player clicks the left arrow, then we will do the opposite. Run a test to verify the implementation. And there you have it, everything works as it should. I want to adjust the position of the widget. Follow me if you are interested. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.